I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Independent School District number 832, the Mahtomedi Public Schools, our regular board meeting on Thursday, March 25th. Roll call of attendance, please.
Kevin Donovan.
Here.
McGraw here. Lucy Buchanan.
Here.
Kelly Regan.
Here.
Stacy Stout.
Here.
Tony Basuni.
Here.
And Ismail.
Here.
Thank you. Next, we have the approval of the agenda. Thank you.
Second.
By Kevin, second by Tony. Any discussion on the agenda? None. All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
Or are we doing a roll call vote?
We have no board members on.
So we're good, just.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification. If we do have a board member who is not in the room, then we have to still do roll call, but since we're all in the room, we can go back to just an aye and an nay. Okay. So all those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Next, we have the approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Tony, second by Kevin. Thank you so much. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have presentations and recognitions. We have OH Anderson Elementary School here tonight as a spotlight. Or who's it going to?
I think Ms. Fraser, there she is. Good evening. Yes, I'm going to have all my OH Anderson staff and students. If you could unmute your camera, we're going to present. And I think Patrick is going to share the screen tonight. I would like to say good evening to the school board, to Superintendent Duffrin, and to all of the Mahtomedi community. I am so excited here to have our OH Anderson spotlight, to spotlight our students at OH Anderson, who are our distance learning students who have showed what learner agency means. And we're going to share with you tonight what that looks like in action. Thank you, Patrick, for driving. So to start out, I'd like to introduce on our slide 2, my distance learning team of educators who have worked tirelessly in the last year to really make distance learning 2.0 a great opportunity for our kids. So I'd like to introduce our team that will be sharing specific examples of how distance learners have showed learner agency in the past year. So on the next slide, Patrick, if we could turn it there. I'd like to introduce my 2 third grade distance learning teachers, Ms. Sadowski and Ms. Warner, my 4th grade distance learning teacher, Ms. Baker, my 5th grade distance learning teacher, Ms. Anderson, and my special ed distance learning teachers, Ms. Sorum and Ms. Stelmack. We also have our specialists that do distance learning as well. Part of our OH Anderson mission statement is really for our students to discover who they are as learners, discover their authentic selves, and build bold learner agency. And that's what we're going to be spotlighting this evening. You might be wondering, what is learner agency? And this is something I'm so proud of all of our distance learning students who really know who they are as learners. How do they learn best? They have the capacity and propensity to take purposeful initiative. It's the opposite of helplessness. They become curious and interested in their learning. They're self-advocates. They learn deeply and value education. They feel a sense of purpose and take action in their learning. And they have voice and choice in their learning.
Hi, I'm Christy Anderson, the 5th grade DL teacher. Thanks so much for having us here tonight. We want our students to know themselves as learners and to set personal goals for their learning. To help our students develop learner agency, students at all 3 grade levels made an All About Me book in which they described themselves and included learning goals for the year. The top picture shows an example of an All About Me book. Also, 5th grade students made a bio poem in which they included a description of themselves and what they like, what they care about, what they want to learn, their goals, hopes, and dreams, and what they wonder about, and finally, what they fear. Here's an example of a bio poem.
Hi, this is McCoy, and this is my bio poem. McCoy Tennyson, kind, smart, athletic, funny, who enjoys reading, sports, butter noodles, penguins, who wonders how microwaves are made, who fears not getting into a good college, who cares about her family and friends, who dreams about getting a trophy from a sporting event, who feels happy, lucky, strong, and who is able to ignore people who bring her down. That was my bio poem. I hope you liked it.
I'm Sarah, one of the third grade distance learner teachers, and we've been supporting, Miss Warner and I have been supporting third graders with understanding themselves and how learning about themselves helps them see themselves as key players in their education. So one thing we asked the third graders to do was to reflect, and that's something they've been practicing all year, is reflecting on themselves and their learning. So Patrick, if you could click on the reflection link, you can just see an example of what the third graders completed. So each question related to one of our Zephyr values related to learner agency. And so some of them were rating scales and some were short answer texts where they could share some short answer questions. And Ms. Warner is going to share a few responses that the students reported.
Hello, I'm Andrea Warner. Thank you for having me here tonight. So some examples that the students put in their reflections were for the section on I was a risk taker when I tried times, which is multiplication. I tried piano lessons. I said I'm not good at climbing yet. I tried chicken shawarma and liked it. Another thing that we reflected on was what we're good at, and a few kids commented on that they're good at coding, going to art on time, feeding the dog, snowboarding, helping my mom cook. We talked a lot about teamwork, so we reflected on times that we showed teamwork, and some responses were in my small group, we worked together to get the answer. I helped my sister with her Chromebook. I helped someone in my group and didn't say you're wrong. And then lastly, we talked about some ways that we can get better at, and some reflection responses were typing, making the S sound, not flirting, and not beating myself up when I make mistakes. And one thing I would like to note is that the students are really starting to see the Zephyr values in themselves in school and outside of school, which is pretty awesome.
We also ask our students often to self-assess their learning and advocate for their learning. So on the top here, you can see that students give themselves a rating of 1 to 5. 5 means I can teach it to others. 1 means I'm not sure where to begin. And they look at some of their math skills. This was a 5th grade math unit. They were talking about multi-digit multiplication, division, interpreting remainders. So they self-assess where they're at, and then they self-advocate for what they might need more help with during win time or small group time, what they might need to practice a little bit before an assessment as well. On the bottom, there are 2 other self-assessments. This is just on an exit slip, looking and self-assessing the learning target about reading temperature. And then there also is a free response for kids to respond to their learning. And this self-assessment really helps them know where they're at and where they need to go. Another piece is we have rubrics oftentimes with our learning. So on this rubric here, it gives clear criteria for success on how we are going to name character traits and give text evidence with it. And that helps students to know what is the criteria that we as the educators want for our kids, and they can self-assess where they're at and continue to redo until they get their quality work. Also, during distance learning and in-person learning, we use 2 tools that really help us give that self-assessment and monitor our progress. One is called Go Formative. and the other is IXL. And what Go Formative is, the computer screen, the Chromebook you see there, there's green dots. So every time a student gets an answer correct, it gives a green dot. So students know, yep, I'm on track. If there's a red dot, they get to redo it or else ask for help. So it gives that immediate feedback for kids so they know where they're at. And on the right, there's a screenshot for IXL, which helps give an explanation to some of the errors. So that self-assessment and self-advocacy is part of their learning every day.
Hi, I'm Maya Stalmek. I'm one of the special education teachers, and students have demonstrated adaptive ways of self-advocacy. There's been a shift from in-person strategies, such as raising their hands or asking their classmates next to them. And students are now utilizing tools such as school email, the chat boxes for questions, speaking up when technology isn't working, and they're also advocating and organizing their work times based on their family schedules.
And this is Sarah again, third grade teacher. And what you're seeing on this slide is evidence of students showing they are curious. And what you're seeing in front of you on the left is a student actually was feeling some frustration with her grandma that they couldn't visit the zoo during the pandemic. So she decided to research some animals on her own, and she set up a zoo. In the background, you can see a few little penguins. She set up a zoo for her family members to visit and share what they learned with her about her reports. And then we also had some feedback from all the third graders when they completed their reflection, and just some things that they see themselves as curious in. Is one little girl said she looks up cat info all the time because she really likes cats and likes learning about them. One student did a mini report on Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and nobody asked her to. She just wanted to learn more. And I also have, I have a special part of a necklace here that Olive made for me. She's being curious about resin and mold and creating some things at home all on her own. So those are some ways students show they are curious.
Hi, I'm Danny Baker, fourth grade teacher. Students have demonstrated the capacity and propensity to take purposeful initiative. One way students have done this is with our online math program of IXL, which we saw earlier. They can extend and personalize their instruction by choosing skills they know they need practice with, or they can challenge themselves by choosing skills at a higher level. Another example we've seen is students taking the time to explore topics of interest on their own. I've had students research a topic we're studying, but digging deeper and taking notes about what they have learned and sharing those notes. When learners link content to their passions and interests, they have a greater stake in what they're doing. The learning and motivation becomes theirs. I've had students create informational books in Google Slides about topics they are passionate about, like ocean liners and golden snub-nosed monkey, which we can take a look at now by my student Cody. He has different chapters, pictures and captions to go with the pictures, a table of contents, and this was all on his own. Excited about sharing his information that he learned about something that he is passionate about.
Hi, I'm Brittany Storm. I'm one of the special ed teachers for the distance learners this year. And students this year have really learned deeply, and they're valuing their education when they're given choices about what they learn and how they demonstrate that learning to others. For example, you'll see Ethan here using Flipgrid to show his understanding of a book that he read for class.
Hello, my name is Ethan, and my favorite part of Hatchet was probably when he was picking berries and he turned around and the bear was right behind him. I also liked the part when he got the survival packet and he was just looking through it and he was so excited and he had so much food. It was like he was rich. Two things that I think showed that he was, two ways that he showed a growth mindset is that when he was fishing, he didn't stop trying. He kept trying and trying and trying and trying until he figured out how to do it. Also, he didn't stop trying to think of new things that he could do, and sometimes they'd work, sometimes they wouldn't, but no matter what, he'd always have a growth mindset and he'd always want to try and do something else, do something a little different so that it would work.
Hello, this is Andrea again. So another area of learner agency is students having a voice and choice in their learning. And in third grade, one example of this was during our reading character studies unit. We read the mentor text of Because of Winn-Dixie. And at the end of our unit, we had a celebration choice board, and students had the opportunity to pick what they wanted to do from the choice board. And one option was from our Let's Talk section, and students brainstormed questions they would ask the author of Because of Winn-Dixie. And they had the opportunity to share their ideas through a Flipgrid, which you'll see an example here.
If I could ask Katie Camillo a couple questions about Winn-Dixie, these would be the questions I would ask. Why did you choose to include Amanda Wilkins's brother? Why did you make Otis be a person who had gone to jail? And why did you make it that the dad is there and not the mom? Or what if you made the mom there but not the dad? And I think the story would change a lot if Winn-Dixie was a cat. It would be totally different. And those are my questions.
So you've seen some examples of learner agency at OH Anderson, but now we want to hear from the stars of the show, some of our distance learners who are going to have just a short interview, finding a little bit about their experiences. So when I say your name, if you can just wave so we know who you are. We have Max from third grade, and Olive from third grade, and Jeremiah from fourth grade, and Ellery from fourth grade, and Melania from fifth grade, and Lila from fifth grade. So welcome to all of you. And I think, Patrick, if you want to stop sharing, we'll just have a little discussion and I'll ask them some questions this evening. So students, if you want to raise your hand, if you want to answer the questions, that would be great. We're going to start with, what have you done to set yourself up for success during distance learning? So let's start with Ellery.
I've been using my room as my I've been using my room as my own little school room, and I can close my door for privacy and quiet. And my mom and dad bought me a new desk and a comfy chair to work at and help me organize my things.
Thank you, Ellery. Is there anyone else that wants to share what they've done to set themselves up for success during distance learning? How about Jeremiah?
Well, I act the same way I would act if I was in person. That means I follow the rules, listen what the teacher says, and follow with my schedule.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremiah. Does someone want to share something that they've enjoyed learning this year? Let's go with Melania. I think she's unmuting her mic.
Sorry. It said
Are you
that it's
talking
not letting her on mute. My thing is really glitchy, so I can't.
Okay, so Melania, did you share? Okay, let's have Lila share. What is something you've enjoyed learning this year?
She is over at my house right now, and she said that it's not letting her unmute.
Okay, does she want to come on your camera and you guys go together? Sure. Okay. That's something we're learning is flexibility if the technology is not working.
So one of my favorite things learning this year was learning about historical fiction and literacy.
Awesome, thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to share something that was something they've enjoyed learning so far this year? Jeremiah?
Or operation, decimals, and state research, pretty much everything. But the most thing I liked that I learned this year is how to be independent and figuring out things by myself.
Awesome, thank you. How about Lila?
I really enjoyed learning about long multiplication and long division. It was really fun, and what made it especially fun was it was challenging, so even when you didn't get it, you kept trying.
Awesome, thank you. And maybe we'll hear from Max and Olive. Can you share with us something that maybe went wrong during distance learning and how you found a solution? We'll start with Max.
When it wouldn't let me join the meet because it said you weren't allowed to join the meet, I contacted my teacher and asked if she could help me.
Awesome, thank you, Max. And Olive, do you have any?
Then, like 5 minutes later, after she fixed.
Thank you, Max. And then Olive, do you want to share something either that you enjoyed learning or one time that you had a problem and you had to learn from that problem how you solved it?
A way I set myself up for distance learning is I made a more calm environment by cleaning up.
Thank you, Olive. I want to personally thank the teamwork that happened with our teachers, these awesome students and their families that really worked together to make distance learning a success across our district. It really does take all of the team to work together. And I just want to say how proud I am of all of our learners for showing learner agency. And I'd open it up if there's any questions from the board.
This is not a question, it's just a comment. But I am just so impressed with what you, the team, and the students have been able to demonstrate tonight. And if this mask wasn't on, the smile might well burst right out the top here, because you've really, students, you've really made my day. You know, listening to what you've had to say has just been fantastic. So thank you.
Tony, go ahead.
I just want to echo Kevin's comment. Having been hearing your voices in my own household for half this year. I do miss hearing your voices around, but having personally experienced some distance learning this year, the agency you guys created in the students has been nothing but amazing. I like to say that our 5th grade students are never going to be more prepared for middle school than the work you've done. And that's going to transition down to the 4th and 3rd graders when they get ready for that transition. So I just want to thank you and Susie and all the teachers, and most importantly, the students that are on this call, because you're the ones doing the work. So give your guys a big pat on the back and way to go.
Kelly, go ahead.
I also want to thank the students. I think that the work that you're doing is incredible. It was so great to get a window into your world of what that looked like during distance learning. It was so fun to see those permanent records, those digital records of all those great things that you had to say and sharing about your experience, all the choices you were able to make. The great use of technology was incredible to see all of the learning that's probably taken place in using all those new tools, the flexibility from your teachers, the leadership from Mrs. Prather. I was thoroughly impressed with the presentation from the O.H. Anderson students and teachers. Incredible work. Great job, you guys.
So I have a question for everyone. So I'm hoping Ms. Prather can answer it, and then maybe a couple of our teachers, and then our students as well. So we've had to do a lot of things differently this year, and you're doing a lot of that work with the distance learning. So I'm wondering what parts of your work will carry over into next year or to a time when you're back in a more normal environment. So maybe Ms. Prather, if you want to start, and then the teachers and students can jump in.
I believe our students have really proven that they can kind of own their learning. So there's going to be a lot more ownership by students, probably a lot more choice and voice, and really the use of technology as a tool to communicate, to share our learning, to collaborate will be some of the things that will carry over. We've learned so much, and we as a staff have really talked about the bright spots of learning this and what we want to continue at O.H. Anderson.
And I'm going to speak on behalf of the teachers and myself. And I have to tell you that the students have taught us equally as much with technology, and the amount of learning I'm doing just from the students I'm working with is pretty incredible. And we always joke about who's doing more teaching and more learning. And I kind of think sometimes they're doing more teaching and I'm doing more learning.
And I'm particularly proud of how independent my 5th graders, and I'm sure the 4th graders and 3rd graders have become. And I'm so excited to see how my 5th graders do in middle school next year when they're in a regular environment, because I think they've just gone beyond, way beyond normal in their development of independence and responsibility as distance learners. And I'm just so proud of them. These two here tonight, my 5th graders, I am so proud of these girls. It's just incredible.
Yes, and I would just echo next year, this year, all years, Olive and I were discussing how great it is to be able to work in groups, whether it's a breakout room online or in person, and being able to problem solve with each other and support each other that way. That's going to continue forever. And Olive, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but that has really stood out to me, the power of still being able to be together regardless of where we are.
Do any students want to jump in and share anything?
And I'm going to say one more thing here. My students have made friends with each other. Kids who didn't even know each other well at all, if at all, have become good friends through breakout rooms, through group projects. So like you said, Miss Sadowski, they really have worked well together, and that social aspect is there. Thanks to some parents who have kind of said, hey, you know, what can we do to get more social in there? And they've made us really push the boundaries and think about it. And these kids do book clubs together and extra meetings together. So it's really worked very, very well. And some really great friendships have formed this year that will carry over into next year.
I agree, Christy. And that just seeing how much they depend on each other and how we all need each other to support each other, whether it's through empathy or just sharing tips, and that kindness just matters. we've all helped each other this year, and it has really shown.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight. We really appreciate seeing into your world and your learning, both the learning of the teachers and the learning of the students and what's happening in our schools. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. Right. So now we have more student voice. Next, we have the student representative report from Ms. Small.
So my student report for the month of March, compared to the other months, we actually have events going on. In Wildwood, there isn't really anything happening at the moment, but at OH on March 5th, they had a beach bingo day. They dressed up in beach wear, like sunglasses, shorts, t-shirts to get ready for spring. Again, another event that the high school should think about doing, because all the fun is to save for the elementary students. And at the middle school, there's a musical called Dear Edwina Jr. that had a showing on the 19th. Also today on the 25th at 7. And then also the 26th at 7 and the 27th at 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. So go and buy some tickets. I'm sure it'll be worth it. At the high school, this was our first full week of full-time in-person learning. But other than that, there was not any other planned events for this month. That's my student report.
Thank you. We have changed the agenda, and Barb has so many good things to share with us that we all want to hear early in the evening instead of at the end and have her rush through her report. So Barb is going to go next with her superintendent's report.
Great. So I have a few things I'm going to share, and I'm going to start by doing just the learning model update. As Ismail mentioned, we are currently, and can you hear me from over here? Do I need to move my mic? Am I okay? Take my mic with me. So we returned to in-person, as you know, for E21 now, and we do still offer distance learning as well. And you saw the evidence of how well that's going this evening. So a few things. I'm just going to do my typical. I'll share with you the county COVID-19 data, school community COVID-19 data, just the protocols, and then talk a little bit about in-person learning. Is there something not quite right? I see movement. Oh, there we go. So as you know, this is our process. It continues to be our process, but here we are now in implementation. A lot of times when I bring this to you, it's to talk to you about the fact that we're about to make a learning model change, but at this point, that is not the case. We are right here in implementation. So there is nothing to update you here, except to say, I will say to you that I do regularly contact our epidemiologists from Washington County. I've spoken with them the past couple of weeks, in particular because I do, as we were going back, I wanted to know what our local data was and what our trends were, if there are any cluster outbreaks, which there are not. And so, and I also just consult about just what we're reading in the paper and what we're hearing about in terms of the variant and just increases, or how does that look in our county. I'll show you. Sorry. I'll show you a little bit about where we are in terms of what's on MDH and then what it is that I learned, which is not a lot, but just a little bit. I'll just give you the update here. Oh, did I do that? Thanks. So, so there have been, we continue to monitor our state guidance. There were some updates to the Safe Learning Plan with regards to gathering, and I'll try and tell you as much as I know at this point. We also monitor that county COVID-19 data, and then we also have our COVID-19 dashboard, and we keep this on the website as well. Oop, here it comes. And so if you want to know what is happening within our district, you can go to our district website. We are still at this time, because our numbers are as low as they are, we are still reporting it as a district level. If we get to a point where our numbers increase by building, we would change this and give you building level data. But because we want to prevent identification of specific students and staff, we're keeping it at a district level at this point because it is as low as it is. Okay, so here's the county numbers. You'll notice, as just to remember, it's 2 weeks lagging. So February 28th to March 13th, you see that we just are continuing to trend downward according to this. We're going to expect next week to be about stable. I don't anticipate that we'll drop after this, and we may see a little uptick, because just recently in the past few days we have seen in Washington County a little bit of a rise. Nothing like the fall, but we are seeing a little bit of an uptick. Oh, sorry, I showed you this ahead of time. What I'll tell you, so I want to talk to you just a little bit about quarantine. So when we were in hybrid at the secondary level, MDH had allowed shortened quarantines so that we could do a 10-day quarantine instead of 14. But as part of that, when you return from quarantine, we needed to be confident that we could keep students 6 feet apart when they returned. That is not the case anymore. So when they return, we cannot confidently keep kids 6 feet apart upon the return. We are using the 14-day quarantine period at this time. I did talk about this with our epidemiologist about this, and he really supported this idea at this time of keeping it at the 14 days, especially in this transition off of spring break and into in-person, and as indoor sports are continuing, because the things that statewide and in general, we know travel, we know the indoor sports are places where we've seen the transmission, or we've seen the number of cases. And so there was a lot of support from our epidemiologist to keep that 14-day quarantine period for right now, and then look at it down in the future, especially so just know that was a change, and that was surprising to our secondary families. Our elementary, we have been keeping, since we've been in person, we've been at that 14-day. And so that wasn't different for elementary, but that was something that took some people off guard at the secondary level. So I would just want you to know that. So events and gatherings, we're still not having large in-school gatherings like assemblies, but we are we've been making plans for graduation. And so what I have here is that the ceremony will likely be held outdoors. That's what we're planning for. We found that at this point, based on the guidance, we think we can get the most students and families safely into if it's an outdoor ceremony. We are getting information from Aldrich. We do still have that saved, and we could potentially do that as a rain backup. But so I just want you to know there are a lot of contingencies we're trying to plan for, but we are working through June 12th, our normal date that we had planned for, and likely we're going to do it on the fields, the stadium field. It will still have limited capacity, because regardless of what we do, it will be limited capacity. So I would want you to know that, but we will be live streaming it. Oh, right, I'm using this, sorry. So I wanted, some people were asking, as we were planning to move into in-person, how did we use our time? And so I don't know that I'll go through it entirely, but just so you know, this is here to make it, clear that we use that time wisely. Part of moving into an in-person learning was the classroom and the physical, the logistical part. But then there was also time to really work on instruction, developing those in-person plans. It's also for elementary, because there's always been a separate distance learning teacher. They don't have quite the same system for when students go into quarantine. So there was some planning for how does it look when all of my students are here, except for the one student who's in quarantine, and what's that going to look like? So there was a different dynamic for our elementary than there is for our secondary, because our secondary model is that students are in person and in front of them. So that was part of what they also wanted to work on. The other part, I know, so OH is listed as Unity Day planning, but in general at the elementary, there was also the, we're all back together. How are we going to all come back together, and what are those things we're going to do to celebrate? So that was part of the work there. And then secondary, you notice we had 2 days. So the elementary, we needed one. We had already made the transition into hybrid, and it was just a few more students. It was less of a transition. Here at the secondary, there was quite a bit more with organizing the classrooms. We had rented storage containers for all our extra desks and things. There was a lot of physical work to do to rework those classrooms. We also had to make sure we could place students 3 feet apart. Our classes at the secondary level are quite a bit bigger than our elementary, so there was a lot more logistical work there. But then again, there was a lot of also some planning. We did a couple changes too, one, we just had a lot more kids in the room. And so what does that look like, and how are we going to make sure we're attending to the students in distance learning still? And then also we adjusted the schedule. So we went from 85-minute blocks every other week, that 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6, and we changed to 45-minute periods every day, which is an adjustment for the teacher. It's also an adjustment for the students, and particularly our distance learners. And so there's been a lot, and I will say, I don't think the transition is quite done as we're doing, we're back in, but there's still things to work out and there's still work to do. The other part they really needed to focus on is working with those students. There were students who were really anxious about coming back for in-person learning. So there was some work to be done there. And then in general, once again, how do we bring kids back? How do we, come back together and celebrate the end of the year in whatever new form we're in. And so there's just a lot of student support work to be done as well. Sometimes you ask me this question. So these are the most recent numbers. This is the percentage of students that are in family choice distance learning by grade. And so that's been a question for you in the past. We do have, I want to say we're down a little bit at the middle school, certainly at Wildwood. And I think OH has stayed pretty steady. I think maybe that's a little bit, that's down a little bit from before, but I think that's been pretty steady. And the high school was, I want to say that this is kind of closer to how we started, and then we had gone up and now we're back down again. So it's a little bit lower though overall. So as we talked about going back into in-person, we thought it was worth just mentioning also that a reminder that even when we were in distance learning, we were serving students. So we called it distance learning, but truly it was just more like, you could even call it a little bit, just a smaller hybrid, because we were still serving students. We were serving our students, special education students, English language learners, students with a 504, students who needed intervention, students at risk of not graduating. We also talked about students who just needed, were really struggling working at home and needed a place to work. There were some students that we pulled in for that as well. So each week we had over 200 students district-wide who attended some kind of in-person support. So I just think it's worth noting that I know we've done a lot of model changes, but we did keep some consistency for our students who needed it the most. And our students that are transitioning to in-person who are in special education did have a really smooth transition because they had that consistency throughout. So our secondary teachers did want to also report that they saw an advantage to bringing in the in-person learning groups during distance learning because they were able to give individualized attention to some of our students with the highest needs. And so, and that also helped prepare those students for the in-person learning model transition. I was talking with a parent, an elementary parent recently, and I was just asking her, just getting her 2 cents on things, how things were going. And she was saying that the 4 days a week of having that hybrid has been really good for, she's felt like that's been a really good hybrid model, and the transition to in-person was great. But she said what elementary parents in particular feel like they're missing is that they're used to being in the classroom all the time. They're used to volunteering. They're a part of everything. And so like they feel like even though their kids have been in school and they're feeling good about that, they're missing the feeling of being connected and being part of that. And so to that, we thought it would be nice to see in-person learning around the district and what it's looking like. And Alice put together a video for you so that you can get just kind of a glimpse into what the schools are looking like right now. Are you steering there? I'm steering. Okay. Do you want to? Because it feels like I'm not being effective with my hair. Sorry, I went to full screen. Sorry. All right. Should I? There we go. Thanks. Sorry. I'll stop. So what you're trying to tell me is to stop touching things. All right, and that's the last. Okay, thank you. All right, thanks. So that's my learning model update. Do you have any questions about anything that I've shared so far? I have a couple other topics I wanted to hit, but questions? Okay. I can believe it. Oh, what happened?
I had a question earlier in your presentation.
Okay,
I was going to remember, but it had to do when if students go on quarantine, if they test negative, do they still stay on quarantine?
Yes.
And that's from MDH or
Yes.
yes. Okay.
Yep. So
I
we're
couldn't
still,
remember.
it's still the 14-day. And again, a little further down the road, we'll look at the shortened quarantines again potentially, because there would be some opportunity for that down the road. But at this point, we have the 14-day quarantine. Mhm.
Still encourage families to test for COVID.
Yeah. So there are a number of there are free testing sites, and you can also test at home. I know my family's done that a few times, and it's pretty easy. So we do recommend that we continue to test because so truly, I mean the idea with testing is that we find cases quickly, and then we are able to isolate those cases. We will quarantine people, but the faster we can do that, the less, the fewer quarantines we end up having because ideally that's what we would like to do. As we mentioned when we went to in-person learning, it's up to all of us because we'd like to stay in person, and the best way to do that is by wearing masks, staying just socially distant, testing, and following all our COVID protocols. So yes, thanks for that question. Do you have any other questions about? Okay, my other two topics, I didn't mention to you, I want to talk about the page. I want to talk about with you. So I'm giving you the warning. Okay, but I did, because I forgot to tell you, we're going to talk about that. But I did also want to be able to talk a little bit about what's been happening at the legislature in terms of the board had brought forward to the delegate assembly some ideas about talking about instructional hours and how we will find flexibility if we could redefine instructional hours and how that's used. And so Lucy's been testifying recently on behalf of the board regarding this bill. And so I thought it would be helpful for Lucy to talk a little bit about that this evening, and we can just kind of talk about how it ties to our strategic plan. So do you want to share a little bit?
Yep. So at the time we passed the resolution, Kelly and Tony were not on the board. But in September, there's a process that the School Board Association uses to develop their platform. And we put forward a resolution as a board. So the whole board talked about it, approved it, and went forward to the delegate assembly. The delegate assembly is a representative group of school board members. We'll be electing a new delegate assembly this fall. So it might be something you're interested in thinking about. Julie and Kevin were delegates last year. And then the representative group from across the state vote on all the pieces that come forward, resolutions. Yes, thank you. And so our resolution did pass, and so it is part of the platform. So if you look at the MSBA platform, they have our resolution in that picture of the gears there. And so I made it onto the platform. And so in January, all of a sudden, people in the House and Senate started talking about our work. And it's slightly changed what we started with in terms of how it's played out in the legislature, because we had said in our work to do away with the definition, but in consulting with national partners at Knowledge Works and they're working with House and Senate leaders, they were open to the idea of redefining, but not eliminating. And so the language that I've been working with House and Senate staffers on is about the redefinition based upon some work done in Utah and other places. And as I said, in consultation with others. And we've got two bills. Senate File 1441 is a redesign bill. And so Senator Chamberlain had me come and testify or MSBA had me come testify to Senator Chamberlain's redesign bill. And this is a very big bill. So it has many different components to it. Within the bill is not only the piece we've been talking about, instructional hour, There are things on 4-day week. There are things on distance learning. There's a number of components. And so when I'm testifying, though, I'm testifying only to our language that this board has approved. So the other topics are there, and there are other people testifying to those pieces and parts of that language. And so there was a day where he had just a general open forum. We talked about these kinds of things. Went back and testified at the Senate when that bill was being considered to be laid over into the omnibus bill. So I did testify there twice. In the House, it's House File 1644. They had the exact same language in the beginning. Representative Elvison is carrying this bill, and she did a change in the bill, so it only has 2 components left in the House right now. It's the instructional hours language and the distance learning language, which has been really pulled back. So the 2 pieces the House is looking at is piece on instructional hours, and then looking to see if we can keep distance learning for 1 more year in order to give us that flexibility for students who might not be ready to come back next year, and just for flexibility. So those are still working their way through. There was, I testified in writing this morning because there wasn't enough time in my day or the House's day, but they had 1644 was on the House floor today, and I have not had a chance with my work schedule to look to see how that went. I assume it passed, but I'm not sure. And then tomorrow morning, that committee is run by Representative Richardson. She will be at the MSB advocacy piece at 9:45 for about 15 minutes, and I will be leading that discussion with her around instructional hours to get her input there. And then on top of that, KnowledgeWorks asked Barb and I to submit a guest blog post about our work around instructional hours. And so Barb and I have been writing that piece. We've submitted it, and we're waiting for their feedback and to see what's going to happen with that. So all the work that I've been doing is based upon the work that you all approved, or the board at the time approved, around instructional hours.
And so the real reason we've been chasing this has to do with our strategic plan. And if you think about, I think strategy 5 has to do with civic partnerships, service, and a lot of what we talked about with that strategy 5, it's the reciprocal relationships one, if you, language is slipping for me right now, but so reciprocal relationships of learning experiences for all students with civic service and community groups. So that was strategy 5. We also have, we will define learning and teaching without barriers, which is strategy 1. And then provide students opportunities to draw out and pursue their passions. And that might be strategy 2. So, or 4. Might be 4. At any rate, that's what it's, if you recall, to go back to the beginning, that's what it's tied to, and it calls for being able to be more flexible with how it is we define instructional hours. So that's where this all comes from. So I wanted to clear that up because I guess there has been a little bit of confusion. Yeah.
And maybe I'm not remembering it exactly right, but I feel like we also talked about things like the capstone project,
Right,
and getting our students to be connected with employers and how this would allow for those opportunities.
right. And that's that strategy that came out of strategy 5, and capstone, mentorship, service, that kind of thing. So yes, you're right. Mhm.
I have a question on the other issue that's not really the one you're testifying on, but on the distance learning, it would just allow us to do that, right? It wouldn't require us to offer distance learning. Is that right?
Everything in Chamberlain's bill and in the House bill is all options. And so it provides boards flexibility. So none of it is listed, as MSBA does, as unfunded mandates, but they are flexibilities we hope that all school boards in the state would have. And so like the 4-day week thing is not something we're interested in, but we know ACGC board has been in a 4-day week for a long time, and it would allow them to continue that flexibility if they chose to, if a board chose that. And that's not something we're interested in at all, but that whole bill is about flexibility for boards to work within their own context.
Back to local control, which we always would prefer. So thank you. I appreciate you sharing that.
So I think what we saw tonight is evidence that this has lots of merit. I mean, the young man that did the report on the snub-nosed monkey clearly went and took this and researched it and did all this work. So learning happened outside of the classroom. And plan when I get home tonight to look up the snub-nosed monkey, because now I'm interested. But I mean, that's kind of the idea, I think, of this deal. And we've seen it with the COVID. I mean, if ever there's been a time when we've had to have flexibility and do things a little differently, it's now. And so why we wouldn't want to then use this as that benefit for moving, what are the benefits post-COVID? And I would say this is a strong case to be made for that. So good job, both of you.
I want to thank you for the advocacy work you've done on this. It is going to be important for our students to meet our strategic plan to have these flexibilities. And I just wanted to mention in some of the MSBA's advocate action things that they've been meeting and talking about AMSD and our advocacy work, and to get this through, they said it's a really big grassroots movement, and the next couple of weeks is going to be very important. So there's some standard language emails that we can do if anyone's interested in the advocacy, or I want to link you up to some of the information I've learned about over the last few weeks. As a board, our voice is going to matter to try to get this through the legislature in the next few weeks, hopefully without too many amendments or changes that don't really meet the need of what we're asking for. So it's been a lot of schoolhouse rock learning and how bills get through, but I want to thank you for helping push the board's voice on this to really meet the needs of our students where they're at. So thank you.
I want to remind everyone though, this is early in the session, right? I mean, anything can happen. Stacy knows this so well. Anything can happen all the way through the session, and it could be adopted. It could be adopted with many changes, and it could die at some point on the floor for whatever reason. I mean, we're very excited that it's getting all the attention and conversation that is, because even if we don't make it through this session, we've opened up the door in the conversation. So I appreciate all the support that you're all giving.
Is there, I guess, question would be, are the ed groups, I think MSB obviously is, AMSD I believe is. How about the other ed groups would be that? And then also, how about the bipartisan support? Are you saying that the two parties are coming together in alignment that this is a good thing, or where is our challenge at this point?
Barb, you do legislative work for MASA, don't you?
Well, yes, so MASA is on board for this as well. Yes. Mm-hmm.
There are some language pieces with the union that are still being worked out. My understanding, I'm not involved. I'm involved with the conversation in instructional hours with some of that language, but then yes, those groups are all meeting, discussing. I believe they're also discussing distance learning at the request of Senator Chamberlain to clarify some language in that distance learning piece. What was the rest of the question, Kevin? I'm sorry.
Bipartisan.
The bipartisan support. I mean, I think that if you could get the aforementioned groups all in alignment that this is a good thing, then you'd get that bipartisan support of this piece, which, ultimately you're going to need to have both sides come together to say yes.
For the instructional hours redefinition, I feel we have that. I've talked to Senator Uyghur, and Barb's talked to Senator Uyghur about it. We've talked to Chamberlain about it in the Senate. It passed unanimously in both committees. So I think that support is there.
The last thing I wanted to make sure I highlighted was Kevin hosted a community conversation about the page amendment, and that was well attended, and I wanted to make sure if you had anything you wanted to highlight there, that you had an opportunity, and then I wanted to add a couple comments. So,
well, I guess a question, I didn't look at the guest list, so I don't know if did anybody else go? Oh, I had good turnout. Excellent. Well, I don't want to be too redundant, but I think of course, the idea is the education clause in our constitutional amendment has remained since for 164 years. So it hasn't been looked at. And so the new proposal, which the first part of it, I think most people can agree is quite strong. I think that there's a few little areas that still are trying to work through. And so the idea the other night was simply a conversation that it's got a lot of different pieces that have to go through. So it has to go, the House has to put together a bill, and I know that's out there. And I think that's bipartisan. I see different, and the Senate and the governor has to, and then it would show up on the ballot in 2022 as something that we all voting folks in Minnesota can vote on. And if you, my understanding is if you don't vote on it, if that lack of a mark on your thing says that's a no vote. So it really has a hurdle to go. But essentially what they're trying to do is say that kids have an equal right to a quality public education. And they're saying quality, a part of the thing is, how do we define quality? And so, you know, some of these things, again, as I kind of shared a couple times, is this idea of, well, when's the last time you really actually looked at the actual one that was done in 1857? I mean, I've done it twice, and that's only because I've had to lobby for additional money at the state capitol. And so most people really haven't seen that. But what I think this is trying to do is make this a conversation starter. It's supposed to, you know, trying to say, look, this is probably the single most important thing. I'm editorializing a little bit, but this is probably the single most important thing that we do as a state, is look at closing that opportunity gap, make sure all our kids can have the skills necessary for the new economy. And so, but part of, there's a little piece in here, Barb may speak to this, I'm guessing she is, about uniform achievement standards and what are they, and how do we measure our students in that. And so it's an engaging conversation. MSBA has put out an article, which I urge you to read, that has kind of the Neo Kashkari page piece. It's got the three superintendents and another ed person that kind of say, yeah, this is great, but okay. And then there's David Schultz, who's a law professor at Hamlin Mitchell, who is, his position is we don't need this. And just as an aside, I have David Schultz coming to the Rotary on May 5th, which is open to anybody that wants to attend. So if you want to see we've had Ellen Page once, we did this event, and then we're going to have David Schultz, so that we can really, we want to, you know, see all sides of this thing. I mean, I think that's really important as we make a very important decision to see all sides. So yeah, good conversation. And
the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I do think it's an opportunity for us to kind of enter the conversation and really push on what are, because it states this uniform achievement standard for the skills necessary for participation in the economy, our democracy, and society. And to me, that little bit at the end is really important, because it really ties to our strategic plan. And so we have an opportunity to say, this is what we're after too, but we want to talk about how are we going to define what are those skills necessary for participation in the economy, democracy, and society. Because by defining that, then we get to start making an impact on how it is we're going to measure that. And so I think without, and I think just talking about this, this amendment without talking about the measurement is going to really limit us, and we miss a really great opportunity. Because if we go, the conversation as I was hearing it, especially from the legislator who was there, and I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, was really was really thinking of it in terms of measuring it by the MCA. And if you think of it in that way, there are some things that are a little bit troubling about that, because the MCA is not a measurement of the skills necessary for the participation in the economy, democracy, and society. It is a measurement, but it's not the measurement for those things. And so I think we have an opportunity as a board and as a community, because of our strategic plan, to really enter that conversation and start talking about what are those things that really do matter to be able to participate in that way. And then let's go after that. So it's not that I've said this before, I'm not against the MCA. I'm against the way the MCA is used in inappropriate ways. And so I don't want that to happen again or deepen the misuse of the MCA. I think there's an opportunity to get involved. So that's why I wanted to put in a plug there, because I thought that was great conversation that happened, and a number of you were there. So thanks. I know that's a long superintendent report. That was not what you had in mind when you let me go first, but I couldn't help myself. So thank you for that. Thank you, Barb. Next, we have discussion information items. First, we have the board calendar. Any events on the board calendar people like to call out? There's an item not on the board calendar that is in the community ed brochure. There's a group called Hope Speaks that Kate Anderson's been able to bring in, looking at equity. I participated in the last round of Hope Speaks, and they're getting ready to do the next round. Very good conversation. If you have the
Tony and I have done it.
to join.
Yes, I can. I would, if you're looking to start and have conversations for continuing your equity journeys and just knowledge, it's a great course. It's good conversations and it's well done. I would highly recommend it.
I've done it, and Kevin, you've done it as well. So if other board members have the opportunity, it's a really good conversation with community members, and then also a larger network across the metro area. All right, anything else on the calendar? Next, we have the second reading of policies with recommended changes.
I will just simply say I haven't heard from any of you in terms of additional questions or things that you would like me to look into with these recommended changes, but I'm happy to pull any up and talk them through. But this is because there are some changes here. We are doing a second reading, and then we'll bring it back at the next regular meeting for approval. But with that, I wasn't planning to pull up any because you hadn't asked any questions. So, okay.
On to action items. First, we have the approval of donations and grants totaling $6,140.95.
So moved.
Moved by Kevin, second by Stacy, the approval of the donations. Any discussion? I'd like to thank all the donors for the donations. The funds will be used to further the mission of the school district of those donors. All those in favor of accepting the donations and grants, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Next, we have the approval of the sale of some bonds. Is that Jeff? That is Jeff. Look at
Hey,
that.
look
He
at
knows
that.
right when to walk in.
So we received this morning at Bakersfield or two bond issues that the board authorized back in February. So one of them, Phil Smith from Bakersfield wants to
Opt in.
join us.
Getting photobombed or something.
Yeah, no, that was a plan.
Good,
There he is.
good evening. Well, I can barely hear Jeff, so sorry about that.
Start over.
Can you hear him now, Kelly?
Yeah, I heard a little better there.
Kelly?
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, I just mentioned to the board that we received the proposals this morning from the two issues that that the board authorized last month. And so I don't want to steal your thunder if you want to present the result. to the
Very
board.
good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Board Chair Payne, members of the board, and Superintendent Duffrin. Happy to be with you tonight. It just dawned on me that a large crowd that was with you at the start of the meeting was not here to listen to the bond sale report, but an interesting report that they had with things that are going on at the elementary school there. Today, we, Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors, took bids on the two bonds that the district had out in the market today. Took competitive bids this morning. I wanted to mention, and I'm kind of following along the attachment that's on the screen now. These were two fairly small bond issues. So we didn't anticipate a large contingent of bidders, but we did receive some very good bids. I did want to point out the chart at the bottom of that first page. This is a 5-year history of the black line is the one that we're really looking at, which is general obligation bonds and interest rates at the 20-year mark of bonds. So as you can see at the lower right-hand corner of this diagram, we have been really at historic low rates for really almost the last year. And unfortunately, we had a slight bump here in the last 2 to 3 weeks, but we still received some good bids. So today we did receive 3 bids on your general obligation facility maintenance bonds and 2 bids on the refunding issue that was out on the market as well. We award the winner of the bid based on the lowest true interest cost. And based on that, Colliers Security LLC submitted the lowest bid for the 2021A issue, and Northland Securities Incorporated had the lowest bid for the 2021B issue. The 2021B issue, I will point out, is a small refunding. So like refinancing a mortgage, if a bond is callable, you are able to refinance it or refund it when we're dealing with bonds. And we did that for interest savings. If the district had not had this facility maintenance bond issue out in the market, we probably would not have done this because there's only a few years remaining on it and the savings are fairly small. But I do want to point out the savings achieved were just under $70,000. And those are savings to the district taxpayers over the last 2 years of this issue. So there were some nice savings, even though it was fairly small issue. The last thing I want to comment on is through this process, we asked for a rating from Standard & Poor's. And if veteran board members will recall, the district a few years ago had a rating downgrade where they did a negative outlook on the district's rating as the district's financial condition had diminished a little bit. I'm pleased to say that the district maintained their AA- rating and the negative outlook was removed and changed to stable. So as Jeff and I talked after the call, I think the district is very close to potentially a rating upgrade. There just was not enough history of that improved financial condition to achieve a rating upgrade at this time, but certainly great movement in the right direction. So kudos to the board on your financial decisions and finance director as well for the work that he has done. So with that, there are 2 resolutions in front of you. I know there were draft resolutions when the board packets first were put out. They have been updated with the winning bidders. So those are current resolutions that are in front of you. And they are separate resolutions and awarding the sale first to Colliers Security for the 2021A issue, and then to Northland Securities for the 2021B issue. And with that, I would certainly be happy to answer any questions any of you might have.
Hey, Kelly, it's Kevin Donovan.
Yes.
My question is on the rating that we're looking at.
Yes.
Is the unassigned fund balance and our policy, is that having that 8% or above, is that a part or a fairly large part of our rating, would you say? And that's why
Yes.
we don't have that history, because it hasn't been above the 8% for that terribly long.
Correct. Fund balance and overall financial condition is a very significant portion of the rating. There's certainly more to it. Enrollment trend is another thing. Of course, your district has been very stable enrollment. I believe when the negative outlook was put on the district, there had been some questions about enrollment patterns during that time, and that has now stabilized. But yeah, fund balance is a key portion. And again, you're moving in the right direction, just have not had enough history to perhaps warrant a rating upgrade.
Yep. I just comment on that whenever I've had these ratings calls, it's all about fund balance. And they did want to see our finance projection model. And of course, we can show that we're going to continue to enhance that unassigned fund balance, but they want to see the actual. So after I think we've done that for a year or two, as Kelly said, hopefully we can get that rating increase.
Any other questions for Jeff or Kelly? So the impact of that rating is, they were telling us before, it would be 1% or 2% or something like that, correct? I mean, it affects the rate that you get.
Yeah. I think when you see, and Kelly, maybe you can talk about this, but when you see where those rates are at right now, that's 0.5%. I used to hear that a rating increase, so if you went from AA to AAA, was worth like 25, a quarter of a percent. So I think when the rates, that's back when the rates were 3.5%, 4%. So at this level, Kelly, maybe you've got you're working with a number of districts.
Sure, I think you're right, Jeff. When you're looking at a 20-year bond issue, then maybe a quarter, 25 basis points, 1/4%. In both of these issues, they're very small in terms of length of time for the issues. And so the difference would be really minimal here. An AA minus is still a strong rating. It's not where you want to be because you've been higher, but that's a very strong rating yet. And this was also credit enhanced, meaning we use the state of Minnesota's current credit rating to further, basically like getting co-insurance on a loan. And the state's rating is AAA right now. So these were very good rates today, and should be pleased with the results here.
One at a time, I believe, because of the different companies that are buying the bonds. So the first motion, I assume that Julie just made, approval of the sale of $645,000 general obligation facilities maintenance bonds, series 2021A. Seconded by Stacy. Any other discussion? Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Looking for a second motion. Thank you. Moved by Stacy. You want to read it, Stacy? Have it in front of me. Oh. I'll read it. Approval of the sale of $890,000 of taxable general obligation OPEB refunding bonds, series 2021B. Thank you, Stacy. Moved by Stacy, second by Tony. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Kelly, for being with us tonight. Thank you, Jeff, for sticking around tonight.
Very good. Thank you.
Kelly.
And I do want to thank Jeff for his help throughout the process. Did a great job getting everything organized. So appreciate it. And thanks for allowing Baker Tilly to be part of the sale process today. Good to see everybody.
Thank you.
Bye now. Bye
Kelly.
now.
Next on the agenda, we have the approval of the bid for the 2021 roof replacement at Mahtomedi Middle School, Gym 2, and building envelope repairs and roof replacement at the High School Fine Arts Center.
Okay. So this kind of follows the bond sale for the LTFM bonds, because what we wanted to do was enhance the scope. Typically, with our LTFM plan, we set aside about $400,000 a year for roofs. As we're looking at our roof management plan, we had some areas that, boy, if we could do them right now, that'd just be really helpful. So you kind of thought about the interest rates on LTFM bonds. Just made sense to do that. So as a result of the board passing that resolution, we can do this, this bid or accept this bid. Bids were received the bond, I want to say about a month ago. But we held off contractors good with prices for over 30 days because we needed to make sure we're selling these bonds. So, yeah, so we would like to award, we got 7 bids. We would like to award to, as you can see there, to Burwell Roofing, $936,300. We had anticipated, and I think when it was presented to the board back in Barm, I think you actually did that back in January to get the authorization. We probably were in that $1 million range. So we were pretty pleased that the bids came in at this level. So part of that is when you do it earlier, you typically will see some more bidders and better bid results. So we just asked the board to approve the bid. Second.
I'm sorry. The sounds all come from that one. I can't see any lips moving. Moved by Julie, second by Kevin. Any other discussion? Kevin, go ahead.
I was just curious. I mean, Atomic, which had done that work prior, no bid. So are they just so busy? They just.
I think that's one of the reasons is that they're busy and they're sheet metal. So they did a lot of the wall repair, I think, in the district, but maybe not so much on the roof work. So, yeah.
But we had a very in-depth conversation about this, and we shared that information from the facilities committee meeting earlier in the season. So
All that you've learned about EFIS, you wanted to
yes,
keep
we know
going.
a lot about wall repairs. Thank
I'm
you.
glad you called. So that I talked to Julie and say, hey, this is what I think, Julie, but
All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Approval of policies on the 6-year review cycle with minor or no changes.
Again, I'm bringing you, I'm asking for approval of all of these. I haven't heard any new questions since I presented them last. These have these are just ones that we review. This is the 6-year review cycle, and so there are very small changes that I've presented to you before. So I am recommending approval of these. And so this is our second reading. Instead of doing 3 readings, which we do with our larger changes, we're only doing 2. That's why they're separated.
Policies. Seconded by Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor of approval of the policies, please say aye.
Aye.
Committee reports. Tony, you want to start the AMSD?
The AMSD is very interested on all the happenings at the Capitol right now. There's a lot of legislation moving. The policy deadline happened, which is kind of a big hurdle to see what's possible to come out of this legislation session. And finance is currently happening right now, and I believe there'll be some more updates coming out on that very shortly. The other half of the report, we actually had some guest speakers in, Dr. Karen Lewis and Dr. Nate Jensen from NWEA. And they presented a very interesting talk on the disrupted learning and what they've learned from looking at about 4.5 million students across the nation in terms of math testing. And so they're looking at literacy and math and the growth that would be happening if there wasn't COVID versus this COVID year, and potentials of try to answer the concept of this lost learning over the last year. And a couple of the key findings that they found is on the literacy front, they didn't see a significant difference in terms of percentile scoring difference of the students that they had good data on. On the math section, they saw about a 5 to 10 percentile point drop. So they know that there's some work that's needed to be done in terms of mathematics for these students compared if there wasn't COVID, what their predicted analysis would be. With the caveats, a couple caveats in this research. One being that their original prediction of what distance learning and COVID and everything that's happened over this past year was predicting a much larger gap than a 5 to 10 percentile point. So whatever school has done across the nation to pivot to meet kids' needs has worked. And they've seen gains from all kids in both literacy and math. So that's some positive news. Right now, they're also looking to try to break into the data, knowing that their data set is missing students. And it's most likely missing the students that were most affected by COVID. And they can't answer a lot of questions based on any of gaps that they might measure right now. So they're still looking at that data. I have a copy of the recording if you haven't seen it. It was a wonderful presentation and I would highly recommend everyone watch it. It does give you a lot of hope on how our teachers have been reaching students and meeting their needs to make sure the learning is happening. And a lot of this is also credited to parents. They noted no one calls themselves not a letters person. And they're saying that's probably why the literacy hasn't lagged as much because it was pretty easy as a parent to tell your kid, go find a book and read. Whereas they found from experience that some parents feel that they're not numbers people. So they're encouraging families to have number conversations with their kids at home because they think that's going to be a strong impact parents can actually use to help get those math percentile points back up and have that, what they didn't use the word loss of learning, but that's kind of a term that you've heard from a lot of families. But that's one way families can help out right now is having those number conversations with their kids. So that's all I have from the AMSD.
Can I just clarify one point? I believe, if I'm not mistaken, their research is based on fall to fall, right? So it doesn't actually capture this year. It captured, I believe it was fall to fall.
It was fall to fall. There was a lot of caveats and nuance in the data. I was trying to get the highlights of what mattered. Yes.
I just think it's important just because it doesn't actually capture a year. It captures, it captures a year of data, but it doesn't capture a year of COVID.
There's more data coming out of this.
Yep.
And as the board, I think if you watch the video, yes. But there's a lot of positives that were taken away from this thing, and I just thought it was important to share.
I feel about data.
Yes, to get get into the analytics of the data, it was quite intense and quite. They did a very nice job.
Yep, they did. They did.
Yes, Barb, you're correct.
Thank you, Tony. That's what I wanted to hear.
Question. Is this piece something that I can grab from the AMSD website?
They emailed it out. So if you're part of their list server, it was the last meeting they had a video recording. If you don't have it, Kevin, I will find it in my email and I'll email it to you.
You have it there somewhere.
They're up on the webpage though. If you want to look at the data slides, they're there because I've looked at those.
With the caveat that the file fall to fall.
I think it's hard to follow the slides without the presentation, to be honest.
They do add a lot to it.
So Kevin, I have a note. I will get the email to you.
Next, we have MAFE. We just had a board meeting on Monday, and the mission moment is Julie Rawlings, and she always makes you feel like, well, it just makes you always warms your heart to hear her presentation. So, she just shared how she had been sharing. It's amazing what she does. So the next thing they talked about, they are looking for applications right now for the Hill Award for this year. And the application for deadline is April 23rd. You can go to the MAFE website and click on the link to see what the requirements are, but it's like a lifetime achievement award for someone who volunteers their time and gives to the community.
Kevin can give us all the information.
Well, I can't give you all the information, but I can tell you that there is a significant nominee from the Mahtomedi area.
Also at NAIF, they have closed the application for most of their scholarships, but they have not had any applicants who are going to a 2-year school. And so really, if you know anyone who's going to a 2-year college, encourage them to apply because they stand a very good chance of getting a scholarship. So the deadline is not solid. It's late May. It's whenever before the scholarship night happens. So encourage applicants. They also have another exciting thing that they're going to do this spring. Now after the last meeting, I told you how they had done this Hearts of Gratitude things where people bought hearts and gave to the elementary teachers. Now they're going to offer high fives for the secondary teachers. And that will be happening April 1st through 13th at the middle school and high school, and delivered on around April 16th. So watch for more information on that. And they have also decided that in lieu of a May Gala, they will be doing Spring Giving Week, and that will be May 9th through 15th. So be watching for more information on that as well. So, you know, despite all the challenges of this year, they're still maintaining a positive attitude and working to add a lot for our school district. So hopefully we'll all support them. That's it.
I've already given my update as part of Barb's superintendent's reports. Kevin, Northeast Metro.
Well, been building up for the last few months. Doing some research. And as you all know, there are 14 member districts. One district is leaving the collaborative at the end of June, St. Francis, and so that board member did not participate in the selection of the new superintendent, so since they will not be part of the collaborative when the new person starts. But we had quite a process, and you know, with 13 different board members, there's a lot of variety, and it makes it actually, there's a plus and a minus to it, as one can do with math and numbers. So at the end of the day, there was a unanimous decision to select the current, she's currently employed by 916 as kind of the number 2. That I don't know if she's officially the, I don't think she is, but she's kind of the number 2 there at the district. Dr. Valerie Bowe is going to be the new superintendent come July 1st of this year. And so that's the big news. We had a meeting last night that went for, I think I was there 6.5 hours in person. We had these plexiglass cubes and stuff. It was pretty cool. But anyway, there'll be a lot more information coming, and I think there's actually an official press
Valerie a lot. She's wonderful. It's a great selection. Other school board committees. Finance was tonight. Right?
Finance was tonight, and really Jeff explained a lot of the things about the rating call and what the governor's budget is. There was really nothing that new to share.
Or right, and he covered some of it tonight, and then I think we'll hear more once we know what the final budget is. So
I have a PTO report, but I did forget to mention on AMSD, they did approve the session priorities. I have them here. If anyone didn't see them, it's the basics of making sure schools funded and COVID's recovery, and it's pretty the standard stuff that we always kind of ask for. So sorry about that.
Yeah, before PTO, are there any other board report, committee reports? I think facilities is the only one that's not, isn't it? I'm thinking about the schedule. I think so. Okay, so now other committees, go ahead.
Sorry about that. The PTO had a meeting this week, and we had a wonderful update from our principals, as they always give. And they're looking at how to do the end of the year celebrations with the new health guidance, and not redefining how they have not assemblies, but breaking out what would normally be an assembly into smaller groups that have field days, kind of all those end of the year elementary experiences. So that's kind of exciting. They're on the calendar on their website. You can look at that. Nature Trail Day, another one that they're looking to have their Aloha Night, 5th grade celebration. And the PTO is also looking how they can, with the volunteer structures and the limitations they've had this year, how they can participate in having that end of the year celebration into those things. So that's what they're kind of working on. Another big update that they talked about that I think our elementary families need to be aware of is the change of next fall to the Family Connections Day. In the years past, there's always been kind of this open house, and it's switching over to this Family Connections Day, where the first 2 days, families are going to be able to have meetings with teachers and have appointments, and really have the teachers have a chance to and families get to know the teachers and do some of the assessment work on those first 2 days. So the first 2 days of classes are going to be kind of like the kindergarten students have had in the past, but that's going to be all elementary wide. That's just something that they talked about. And the PTO is going to be contributing funds. So during that time, students will be able to walk away with books from that event. So that's kind of an exciting partnership that's on the horizon. Next month, they're going to be not having a public PTO meeting. They're going to be using that as a work session to kind of figure out where they're going on to the next year. So that's my PTO update.
Well, this is no formal groups here, but just a question of clarity, and I don't know if we've gotten it yet, but the Dinner of Excellence, and I should have brought this up during the calendar thing, but the Dinner of Excellence, it says to be announced. Do we have a date yet?
Yeah, you do. It's on the calendar.
You have the date, but I don't know if there's a time.
April 21st.
I think they're still landing on exactly what the in-person component will look like. There will likely be some kind of combination of virtual and in-person. And so I think that's why we don't have as much detail at this point. So we may not be invited this time around. Yeah.
So I wanted to piggyback on Tony and just say anyone that ever had interactions with Julie Hendrickson on the nature trail, they are going to honor her as she passed away this summer. And so they're going to do like a ceremony to honor all of her work on that at a Nature Trail Day. And I believe it's May 13th. So.
Last thing I promised that I wanted to save the best for last year. There was a wonderful article in the White Bear Press. Hopefully everybody's going to see it. But again, another really wonderful example of student agency. The base group at the high school wrote an article about their group and what they're doing in the high school that went in the White Bear Press. So if you haven't seen it, I strongly urge you to read it. It's pretty cool. So there you go.
I guess this would go under other items. So this pertains to our senior class, and that the senior party committee has been meeting to try and pull that event off for seniors in this very unique environment. And they have met multiple times. And one of the areas why I wanted to bring this up is obviously this is a very different year with not being able to go out to businesses like they did in the past for asking for donations and things like that. They're really having to get creative about fundraising and things like that. So I still think that they would welcome additional people. who might be interested in helping with that, to be able to pull off this event and trying to do it in a very different environment and financially having to make a lot of different decisions. So that senior party event is moving forward, and maybe Barb has anything to add. I'm not sure about that or not. A lot of has been up in the air because of waiting for the guidelines around in-person events and celebrations. So I'm sure they're working through that now. I know that Kimberly Peterson is kind of the person at this point, or a go-to contact for that. So she's just jumped in and said she's willing to help whatever this ends up looking like.
So,
Okay.
second.
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you so much.